Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy, know y'all with me, let's get it, baby.
Welcome back to another edition of the
Rockin' Royal,
Rock and Roll
Rockin' Navy,
podcast. Here for another basketball edition of the show, but not the kind of basketball you're thinking. We're talking women's basketball today with a special guest of the program, new BYU women's basketball head coach, and really an all-timer in the history of the men's basketball program. The Spider-Man himself, Leezy 4-3Z, Lee Cummard is the 8th head coach in the history of BYU women's basketball. He succeeds Amber Whiting after 3 seasons in Provo. You remember he was Whiting's associate head coach last year, spent 3 years on her staff, and then was also on the staff for about 3 years prior under former head coach Jeff Judkins, as well as as a graduate assistant and assistant coach on the men's basketball staff under legendary head coach Dave Rose over there. So Cummard comes to Provo with no head coaching experience, but an extremely distinguished career in the history of BYU basketball. He's one of the best players in program history, former Mountain West Conference Player of the Year, graduated in 2009 before spending about a dozen years playing professionally, mostly overseas, although he got his start playing in 2009-2010 in the NBA D-League for the old Utah Flash, RIP, the now-defunct Utah Flash. His coach, by the way, one Mr. Kevin Young, future Philadelphia Sixers assistant, Phoenix Suns assistant, and now the head coach of the BYU men's program. So things kind of coming a little bit full circle right now for both Kevin Young, head coach of BYU men, and now Lee Cummard, head coach of the BYU women. Cummard suited up for the Cougars from 2005 to 2009, where he earned All-American status as a junior and senior. The 6'7" guard was named an AP All-American honorable mention in 2008 and a fourth-team All-American by FoxSports.com in 2009. He was a 3-time All-Mountain West Conference honoree, earning third-team honors as a sophomore in 06-07 and first-team nods in his junior and senior years with the Cougars in 2008 and 2009. At the close of his 4-year career, Cummard ranked in the top 20 of 28 statistical categories, including second in effective field goal percentage, third in consecutive games played, fifth in three-point field goal percentage, and free throw percentage, sixth in consecutive games started, 10th in offensive rebounds, blocks, total victories, and 5 steal games, 12th in games played, games started, and 12th in 3 block games. The new head coach also ranks 13th in made threes, minutes played, points per field goal attempt, 14th in blocks per game, 15th in made field goals, double-figure scoring, 16th in points, 17th in field goal percentage, and 20th in rebounds. He played professionally from 2009 to 2016 in France, Japan, and Belgium, as well as a brief stint in the NBA D-League. And him and his wife Sarah are the parents of 3 sons who live in Provo. So this is a guy who bleeds BYU blue. He is BYU. He's from Mesa, Arizona, product of Mesa Mountain View High. But it felt like Lee Cummard always had a career in coaching. I covered him as a player. I now covered him as an assistant coach. And it felt like his coaching career was always going to lead him back to BYU somewhere. At one point, I had him as a target for the BYU men's program to eventually kind of maybe be an assistant in that system and take over that program. Instead, he moved over to the women's side on Jeff Judkins' staff, stuck around on Amber Whiting's staff, and now he gets a chance to lead this team from the head of the bench, if you will, as the 8th head coach in BYU women's basketball history. So some would call it the safe hire. There's a little bit of that. Some would call it an exceptional hire. I think it's a good hire. I do. You're always a little bit nervous about first-time hires, though. Always a little bit nervous there. I understand some of that trepidation. But one thing that I do know about Lee Cummard is he is BYU. Everything about him is BYU. He bleeds blue, as they say. Him and his wife, Sarah, both bleed blue. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. He's not going anywhere else, at least not for now. We'll see what he can do with this BYU women's program. It should be noted, almost the entire team that's still involved on the roster, not in the transfer portal or on a mission or leaving on a mission. They were all there at Coach Cummard's introductory press conference in the Marriott Center Annex earlier today, speaking Monday afternoon. Mariah Hudgens, one of the first people there, she's very excited about this hire. Delaney Gibb was there. I saw Brentley Cannon for a brief moment. I think I saw Naya Tanuvasa. I'm not entirely certain if I saw Naya, but I'm pretty sure I saw her there. Pretty much the entire team was there, and there was a rousing ovation for him from several BYU staff members, including the aforementioned BYU men's staff, led by Kevin Young, all of his assistants there, Director of Player Development Jordan Brady, and a bunch of video staffers as well. I saw Justin Young in the house, and in addition to Tom Holmoe, who spoke briefly, to Brian Santiago, Deputy Athletic Director. Diljeet Taylor was there, BYU women's cross country and track and field coach, the GOAT of BYU with a couple of national championships, and now the head coach of Swoosh TC, Swoosh Track Club, that will be based out of Provo and sponsored by Nike beginning this upcoming summer. So all the dignitaries were there. They were in the house supporting. He's got the support of this administration. He's got the support of this team, of this program. And now we'll see what Lee Cummard can do as a first-time head coach in collegiate women's basketball. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. But I did have a chance to sit down and talk with him a little bit about what he hopes to bring to this program and how he hopes to kind of leave his stamp on BYU women's basketball, as well as a little bit of a recruiting update. You'll notice there hasn't been a recruit or a signee that's decommitted from BYU since the coaching change about three and a half weeks ago or so following the Big 12 tournament. So recruits are also seem to be getting in line with Lee Cummard as their head coach, and you'll hear him say he's already reached out to several of them, including a certain missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who I think you're going to want to stay around it to the end to hear about. So without further ado, here's my brief conversation as he was introduced with new BYU women's basketball head coach Lee Cummard.
When I say the words BYU women's basketball coach Lee Cummard, what's the first thing that kind of pops into your head? What was sort of the first thing that I guess that you pitched, Tom, Brian, President Reese, President Vorking, everything, as you kind of had these conversations about this position? What was kind of the first thing that you wanted to sort of project yourself in that role, I guess?
Yeah. For me, I think it came through clearly in the press conference, but like my love and desire at BYU is tremendous, and there are a lot of athletes or people part of a program that want that same thing, and we're going to go headfirst into what that actually is. We're going to be completely aligned with what this university is about as people, as students, and as athletes. And on the athletic front, there's a tradition of winning here, right? And there's a commitment to it as well. And we're going to do our part in carrying that tradition forward. And what does that look like? Excellence is the expectation, like I said, and just going about it that way. I think that for these young women, we're going to connect, we're going to care, and we're going to challenge the heck out of them, right? And that's a two-way street. That's actually a couple-way street, player to player, coach to player, and player back to the coach. And so that's kind of be the foundation of how we go about things within the program.
Sure. You mentioned you've already spoken with the team. Most of the team was here, obviously, in your press conference, and you had a meeting before this, kind of giving them the news, celebrating. I'm sure the locker room's still wet from all that or wherever you had that team meeting, right?
Sure.
Have you had a chance to reach out to some of the recruits, signed, even a couple of committed athletes that are unsigned, sort of kind of let them know? And what was, I know obviously you can't talk about unsigned recruits, but what was kind of just the general reaction, I guess, from some of them?
Yeah, so absolutely. We have several recruits currently committed, and those conversations have been had, and they're still ready to come and play at BYU. We currently have a good player, but an even better person out of the portal here with us visiting today. I literally drove from the airport.
Already getting to work.
Yeah, from the airport straight here, met with her briefly, and then She's actually going on a facility tour right now while we do this. But yeah, those conversations are having. We have girls out on a mission that are well aware of what's happened. And I actually emailed Kaylee Wilston because today's her P-Day. Right. So I shot her an email early this morning, let her know what was going to play out and how important she is to our program. Yeah. So yeah, all that's in the works. Feel really good about where everybody's at and their desire to be a BYU Cougar. For sure. And just excited.
Well, that desire to be at BYU, and you touched on this a little bit, but you know plenty about basketball and your pro career and everything else, but BYU your job is first and foremost about basketball, winning games, all that stuff, but there's just so much more just to the university with the culture, the honor code, the church, and all of that stuff. Is that going to be a big part of the program, even for, some of the you've recruited non-member athletes that have come through here and that kind of thing? Is that still a focal point of the program?
No doubt about it. I mean, we do have quite a few non-members, and several of them are coming this next season. It's not about being a member or not being a member. This place is a great place. If you want to have high character, play really hard, and do it for the group and not for yourself, you'll have the greatest 4 years or your greatest, however long you're here, experience of college basketball. Like I said, I realize winning's a key component of that. It adds to the player experience. But yeah, we are going to fully dive into what this university is about. But it's less about being a member and being a good person and strengthening their walk in this life.
Last question, but the most important one, capital J journalism. I've got to put on that hat right now. What's Sarah cooking you for the birthday dinner?
Sarah and the boys are actually in Arizona. I flew home late last night.
Oh, that's right.
It's spring break. That's right. So we had a great meal. We actually had 2 great meals yesterday. One with Sarah's family about middle of the day, and had some great desserts to kind of end that meal. And then at my folks' house last night with my side of the family, and a lot of steak and great food involved with both meals. So,
we granting kids wishes like that boy Cosmo. I got you. They steady hating on us, but we who they watch though. The Pac-12 mad, but we still on top, bro. Jaren Harder, Cody X, that's a cool connect. Yeah, my team is kinda old, but it's cool events. I'm hitting too hard.